Hello and welcome to my cake kitchen. In today's video, I'm going to show you how I fill and stack a cake using unstable buttercream during a UK heat wave where temperatures are rising up to 26 degrees C. Now, this buttercream had a few issues already that I fixed in an earlier video, but in today's challenge, I'm attempting to fill a cake with this buttercream without it having to shift or fall apart. As you can see, I have already layered a first layer of cake secured to the work surface, and this step is extremely important to the stability of the cake I am aiming for, especially under these conditions. So I'm going to skip through and walk you through exactly how I prepared the base and explain to you the thought process around that, because if you're filling a cake in warm weather conditions, these little adjustments can make all the difference between success and disaster. Now, the first thing I do is work directly on a cake drum as my work surface, and this allows me to transfer the cake onto a later display surface. But in the meantime, working on the work surface allows me to keep an eye on the stability of the cake throughout the stacking and filling process. I explained this in much more detail during a live tutorial on the channel, which is already in the live homepage, so I encourage you to check that out. But this is a summary of the important parts. So onto a cake drum, I spread a thin layer of ganache, and even though this cake is going to be filled with buttercream, the cake itself is going to be completed as a polished ganache cake. So I use ganache as my glue. Once the thin layer of ganache is spread on my work surface, I place a second cake drum on top, which is the same diameter as the cake. The small 6-inch drum sits directly on top of the thinner layer of ganache, and then the whole setup is left in the fridge to chill for 10 minutes. Now, this part is extremely important. The reason for chilling is to allow the drum to set to the work surface. After chilling, I bring back the work surface and the drum to apply another small layer of ganache on top of the 6-inch drum before placing my very first layer of cake down over the 6-inch cake drum. At this point, I also chill the first layer of cake about 10 minutes again, because what I'm trying to achieve is stability at every stage. So this is what it looks like. The work surface is attached to the drum, and the drum is attached to the cake, and the cake is secured before stacking. Once the first layer of cake is set, I go around the edges with ganache to completely seal it in place. Since this cake is going to eventually be stacked to 5 layers, I need to know the base is completely secure before continuing. I talk you through all this and more in a real-time live tutorial, which is raw and unedited, that you can check out. I'll leave details in the description box, or I'll link it at the end of this video. Now that the base is secure, we can move on to filling and stacking the cake. So on top of the first layer of cake, I add my buttercream filling. There are different ways to assess your filling here. You could use a scoop or piping, but I'm trying to cut down handling and make time very efficient. So I've eyeballed this because I'm familiar with the quantity I need here. I spread the buttercream evenly on top of the cake before placing the second layer of cake. And the process becomes a repetitive thing of buttercream, then a layer of cake, buttercream, and then a layer of cake until the cake is completely stacked. But the most important thing is controlling the consistency of the buttercream. If you're a beginner watching this, I'll be honest with you, warm weather conditions and cakes do not work, and this requires skill, confidence, because without these, the whole process can be very frustrating, because working with unstable buttercream is not for this faint-hearted. If you must work in warm conditions, choose buttercream that gives you your best possible result. And in this case, I will recommend maybe American buttercream, or even better still, Italian meringue buttercream that can guarantee some better structure throughout the process. But still, whatever choice you make, warm weather still requires adjustments to the process for best results. So now that we are layering until we reach the 5th layer of cake, you'll see that as I stack, I scrape around the sides of the cake. This removes the excess buttercream from pushing from inside of the cake. This step is really important to keep your cake clean, because when ganache goes onto the cake, any excess buttercream that is left behind can create texture differences underneath the ganache surface and eventually cause instability problems with your cake. I will show you how I clean the surface through trimming in another video if you stick around. Another major tip when working in warm weather conditions is to make sure that you are time efficient, in that the time between your work surface and your fridge is very short and workable to avoid unnecessary handling of your cake. It simply means do not spend too much time handling the cake, because the warmth of your hands and your work environments can affect the stability of your buttercream. Despite the heat wave, our cake is stacked fully and the buttercream has held up beautifully without falling apart. At this stage, the cake goes straight into the fridge to firm up for the next phase. I have worked through these processes, making the information more accessible to you so you can catch up on the live tutorials. But our cake is fully stacked now. We're going to chill it and then we'll come back and continue with how our cake progresses during this warm weather conditions. I'll see you on the next one.